Hi, everybody. Whoop. There's my alarm going off. That here I know. And actually, if you guys want to go ahead and just admit people, I have to do one other thing. You should be able to as co-hosts. Let's have a migraine from today. Everyone who's here, people are still joining. We are going to start this conversation at about 8:02, just to give the people a chance to join. And 8:02 Eastern. That would be 7:02 Central.
Recording in progress.
Oh, shoot. That is just on in case I. All right, let's see. Good. More people are coming. This is great. Really good. All right, it looks like it's about time to start the presentation. So let me get. So I want to apologize for everyone who's here. Oh, one moment, sorry. Stop focus mode. Okay. All right, this is going to be recorded. It's going to be shared on our YouTube channel. So if you are more comfortable knowing that, having your camera off, changing your name, please feel free to do that. It's totally okay. My name is Karen. I am with Defense of Democracy. I'm I'm going to assume that everybody has heard of the recent announcement by Donald Trump or the Trump administration regarding the dismantling of the Department of Education. So I'm just going to read a statement that Defense of Democracy is putting out regarding the dismantling of the Department of Ed. And this is what we have. The closure of the U.S. I just can't even believe I'm saying this right now. The closure of the U.S. Department of Education, USDE, will have devastating consequences that will undermine years of progress in supporting equitable educational opportunities for our most vulnerable students. Rural communities. Rural districts rely on federal funding to supplement limited state and local resources. Without federal support, rural districts will face teacher shortages, outdated materials, and difficulty maintaining school facilities. Low-income students. Low-income students rely heavily on federal resources and support provided by the USDE. This includes Title I funding and other programs designed to ensure that disadvantaged students have the tools they need to succeed academically in K through 12 schools and to pursue higher education. Students with disabilities. For students with disabilities, the closure of USDE means a loss of critical services and protections that help ensure an inclusive educational environment. USDE oversees the enforcement of key legislation such as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, which guarantees students with disabilities the right to a free and appropriate public education. Without the department's oversight, the future of these essential protections is uncertain, putting students at risk of facing discrimination and barriers to accessing quality education. Civil rights education. USDE Office for Civil Rights enforces key protections against discrimination based on race, gender, disability, and sexual orientation in schools. Without this oversight, there will be fewer mechanisms to hold schools accountable for discriminatory practices, jeopardizing the rights and safety of students, especially those from marginalized communities. Higher education and student loans. USDE oversees student loans, Pell Grants, and repayment plans. Its closure could increase costs for students, especially those from working class backgrounds, and allow unchecked predatory practices by for-profit colleges. Overall attack on public education. The closure would likely divert public funds to private and charter schools through school voucher programs. This shift undermines public education, draining resources from already underfunded schools and disproportionately harming students in low-income areas. This is part of a broader strategy to dismantle public education, weaken teachers' unions, and impose political control over curricula, threatening academic quality and critical thinking. This is a pivotal moment for American education. It is vital that we do not lose sight of the promise of equal educational opportunities for all students, regardless of their background or abilities. We must act now to defend the fundamental right of every child to a quality, equitable education before it is stripped from those who are most vulnerable. Defense of Democracy is committed to advocating for policies that support equitable access to education for all students, particularly those from marginalized communities. We will continue to strive to ensure that every student has the opportunity to succeed, regardless of their socioeconomic status or ability. And friends, this is the world we are living in right now. Defense of Democracy is the only national, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization single-focused on the protection of the American public school system from attacks by extremist groups. Our job just got exponentially harder today. So thank you all for joining this conversation. It is a really important discussion that we're going to be having about a specific group called Lifewise Academy that is taking advantage of certain loopholes in the law. So I'm going to start my presentation. As you can imagine, there has been an awful lot going on. And I have thrown together, and I apologize that it's not as polished as I might like, but I do have a presentation I'm going to share and an awesome video that our friends at, I know it's not Parents Against Lifewise anymore, Secular Education Associates, correct? Okay, thanks.
Association, you almost had it. Secular Education Association, yeah.
Okay. Yes, this is being recorded. All right, here we go. All right, let's do the slideshow. Okay. Simple question. We've put this ad out everywhere, so if you see it, please share it because we're trying to raise awareness about this. I'm preaching the choir. The stakes have never been higher, right? Protecting our schools. Now we're talking about Lifewise Academy, and in their paperwork, it states that their goal is to reach unchurched children in public schools. This is what evangelism is, all right? This is spreading the word of God to people who are not who are Jewish or Muslim or atheist or anything besides evangelical Christian. Okay. And we're going to talk about how they are doing that and what it means and how they're using basically young children in elementary school to become little evangelicals. And it's really very insidious. So we're going to be talking not only about the problem, but we're going to be talking about ways to fight against this because it is about action. There are 3 steps. We boiled it down to acquire knowledge, advise your community, and advocate for your schools. And we're going to talk about all 3 of these steps today. You are on step 1. You are on the acquire knowledge phase of this situation. So welcome to step 1, acquire knowledge. I am now going to play this video. Some of you may have seen this, but for those of you who didn't, it's very important to watch this.
This presentation is brought to you by Secular Education Association in conjunction with Defense of Democracy. Secular Education Association, or SEA, formerly known as Parents Against Lifewise, began in 2023 when a group of concerned parents found each other and started comparing notes about an organization called Lifewise Academy, an organization that had infiltrated their respective public schools. Since then, SEA has established a network of over 10,000 concerned parents and community members from all over the country. We believe that our public education system is invaluable and must uphold the principles of fairness, equality, and academic neutrality. We strive to preserve the separation of church and state, a fundamental cornerstone of our democracy. In this video, we will explain in detail the difference between Lifewise Academy and something known as Release Time for Religious Instruction, or RTRI, which refers to programs where students, with parental permission, are excused from school during the day to receive off-campus religious instruction. In 1952, the Supreme Court upheld one specific New York school's implementation of this type of program in the case of Zorak versus Clausen. The program in question was deemed constitutionally permissible because the program was voluntary, off-site, didn't use public funds, and the school did nothing more than release students. Following these guidelines has been a long-standing practice. For years, all around the country, these types of programs have been used as a way to provide children the appropriate environment to further understand the faith and practices of their family's religion, whatever they may be. Lifewise Academy, on the other hand, takes advantage of release time for religious instruction accommodations by using a plug-and-play program that has been compared to a multi-level marketing scheme. Their vision statement clearly states that their goal is to, quote, reach unchurched students in public schools. Unlike other RTRI programs, this is about conversion. Religious extremists have been targeting youth in grade schools for decades, often quoting an evangelical study called the 4 to 14 window. They know that indoctrinating children 14 and under with a Christian worldview makes them statistically more likely to carry these views into adulthood. We will illustrate how they are doing this with such success. But first, let's talk about how we were able to uncover Lifewise's plan to evangelize public school children. In 2024, Secular Education Association exposed Lifewise Academy and their fundamentalist beliefs when one of our founders published their curriculum online. Here are just a few of the alarming statements found in some of their internal documents. In their Boosting Enrollment handout, Lifewise instructs their volunteers to provide students with an Invite a Friend flyer, rewarding students who are able to recruit other children to attend Lifewise with them. Other manipulative tactics include encouraging volunteers to access their school's directory information, outfitting the Lifewise kids in special t-shirts, and asking to be invited to school's open house events.
It is all above board until it's not. No school staff person does anything until they do.
Chapters promised ice cream or popcorn parties if kids got their friends to sign up. Another Ohio mom sent NBC News this note her child received from a classmate on Lifewise letterhead, pre-written to say, "My favorite part of class is," the classmate writing everything and inviting the child to join Lifewise.
The Lifewise Statement of Faith reads, quote, "At physical death, the unbeliever enters immediately into eternal, conscious separation from the Lord and awaits the resurrection of his body to everlasting judgment and condemnation." Imagine, if you will, a child returning to school from a Lifewise outing and approaching their fellow Jewish or Muslim classmate with the news that because of their religious beliefs, they will be condemned and judged. Unfortunately, this isn't an imaginary or theoretical situation. We have dozens of reports from parents whose children came home from school upset after bullying instances just like this. Lifewise has a much larger political agenda than they would like to publicly admit. They have deep connections to organizations such as the Heritage Foundation and First Liberty. Lifewise has written proposed legislation in order to change state laws all across the country and have already successfully done so in 3 states. Their newest legislation model was recently adopted by the National Association of Christian Lawmakers. The NACL has legislative members in 31 states and one mission, quote, to restore the Judeo-Christian foundation of our nation. Make no mistake, this legislation model, which is being introduced on behalf of Lifewise in 14 states this year, was carefully and intentionally designed with the hopes of overturning the federal precedent established by the Zorak case in 1952. Let's take a quick look at what Lifewise classes actually look like.
Oh, this is really bad. Harvey thinks that church is dumb. But Betty, she loves church. She loves learning about the Bible.
Having little or no interest in church is not bad behavior, and teaching this mentality does nothing more than cause division. An internal document titled Difficult Questions outlines how Lifewise instructs their employees and volunteers to address questions that children might have about being transgender, being gay, sex before marriage, cohabitating before marriage, getting a divorce, and more. All of these things are considered sinful, and by being so or doing so, you are going against God's word. And as we all know, going against God's word ultimately ends up in punishment. Now, let's discuss some very real safety concerns with Lifewise. Lack of appropriate vetting by Lifewise of their employees is certainly one of the most upsetting and potentially dangerous issue of all. Lifewise Academy is not required to follow the same stringent regulations and background checks as public schools do. This lack of oversight results in hiring unqualified teachers, bus drivers, administrators, and worse.
A teacher fired from an Ohio school district is now on administrative leave from Lifewise after she was named to lead one of its local chapters. Renee Beck was fired from Loudonville Perrysville schools in Ashland County in 2018. Over allegations that she was sending explicit text messages to students. She later surrendered her teaching license.
Now let's take a closer look at the schools that Lifewise is targeting next. This map shows the progression of Lifewise's national growth. You can access this map on our website at parentsagainstlifewise.online/map. Here we have step 10, the final step in Lifewise's launch plan. We are looking at schools where a local chapter is up and running, actively indoctrinating students to a Christian evangelism. Now, let's look at schools just one step behind in the quote, execute the plan phase. Step 9 is the local Lifewise team preparing for a successful launch. At step 8, the local Lifewise director and volunteer board are receiving in-person and online Lifewise Academy training. Schools on step 7 have a local steering committee that has been set up to identify the leadership team that will launch a Lifewise Academy in their community. On step 6, public school officials will be presented with a written request to move forward. This is a crucial step and in many cases the last chance to stop Lifewise from gaining a foothold. Step 5 is the point when a Lifewise steering committee connects with a Lifewise corporate coach in order to prepare the proposal that is sent on to school officials. At step 4, a Lifewise steering committee is being formed within the unsuspecting community. This is also a crucial period, as there is still time to raise awareness and mobilize your community to stop their presence. At step 3, individuals interested in launching a local Lifewise are asked to contribute a $500 launch fee, demonstrating their commitment to the mission and funding the efforts of getting the following steps completed. Communities listed as being in step 2 should expect a Lifewise kickoff event in the near future. Most kickoff events take place at local evangelical churches where members are shown a Lifewise presentation. This is step 1. Almost our entire map is green. Step 1 is collecting signatures on a virtual form that says, I'd like to have a Lifewise Academy started in my town. Chances are that a school district near you is currently in this phase. Our research shows that there is no verification as to where these signatures come from. Literally anyone can sign their name to this form, whether or not they are actually members of that community. We believe that this map is an invaluable resource. It can help inform your community if you are fortunate enough to be between steps 1 and 6 of the Lifewise launch. Don't worry, in the unfortunate case that your district falls between steps 7 to 10, we are still here to help and provide support. For more information, resources, documentation, or to join the discussion, please scan the QR codes and don't forget to join our Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at contact@seculareducationassociation.org.
So I first want to just really thank the team over at Secular Education Associates for working on that video. We've been working on it all week. Like everything else we do, they are a fully volunteer organization. They are doing this because they simply care about kids. So let me go back to my slideshow and see what I was.
This presentation is brought to you by Secular Education Association in conjunction with Defense of
So sorry. Okay. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen because I'm going to talk about some of the tools that that Defense of Democracy and Secular Education Associates have been creating that will be of assistance. So on step 2 of our 3-step process here is the advise, right? And we have created, how are you going to advise your community? How are you going to share the information that you learned? Well, we have letters to the editor that we've created, writing to your local newspaper, letting people know, hey, if you weren't aware of it, there's this thing happening in our school district and you should be aware. Lifewise does not want you to be doing this. They do not want you to make a deal about them until it is too late. So again, if you're in that step 1 through 6 area, you know, sending out letters to the editor, going to your school board meetings, reading statements, letting them know, sharing letters. We even have a template of a letter that you can share with other pro-democracy organizations. We have talking points that you will be able to use when you're like maybe in a Q&A about what Lifewise is. And then the final step is step 3 is advocating. So forming alliances, those letters that you write to those other organizations, these are just some of Defense of Democracy's coalition partners who I know would be on board with you know, stopping something like this. But forming these alliances is really important, and getting and giving support. So for this, I just put, you know, Defense of Democracy and Secular Education Association. Like they have, they're going to invite you to their Facebook group, join that, join Defense of Democracy, you know, follow along and get other people to join. Like we could do our own little MLM thing, right? Like, you know, just help us grow, because the more people who know about this and the more people who understand what it means, the better off and the more fortunate our communities and schools will be. So now what I would like to do is introduce the 2 individuals who are the driving force behind Secular Education Association. That is Zach Parrish and Molly Gaines. I'm sorry, Molly, if I'm Molly Gaines. So I would love it if you guys could kind of, I'm going to make a spotlight for you 2, and so that we can do some Q&A. So if people have questions that you want, that you could put in the chat, I'm happy to share them with Zach and Molly. So.
Yeah, I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm Zach, obviously. Thank you guys for coming, I suppose. But yeah, we've been fighting this for a while now. I've personally been doing it since 2021 when my daughter, you know, first got we first dealt with it in 1st grade over in Ohio, and I've just been fighting it ever since then. So
hi guys, thanks for being here, taking the time out of your night, especially on such a traumatic day for us involved in education advocacy. We really appreciate your time. I'm Molly Gaines, and I'm also with Secular Education Association. I sort of saw some red flags in my general, I lived in a rural area, and their slogan during school hours really struck a nerve with me. And upon some research, I couldn't find any opposition. I couldn't find any solid details. It all seemed very sketchy. And so my research ended up finding Zach, and Zach was one of the only people that was sort of yelling into the abyss of, what is this Lifewise Academy and what's going on and how is it legal and why is it happening and why is my daughter suffering for it, right? And from there, we just sort of decided that other parents needed to know. We needed to get awareness and try to get out in front of it as fast as we could, since it started in Ohio and it was spiderwebbing outward from us. So that is our main goal right now anyway, is awareness. And of course, it's what we can do to fight back against this, because it's just another arm of dismantling public education. As we've seen, it's just another arm of Christian nationalism and of Project 2025. And so it's all sort of intermingled enough that we need to be paying attention to every single facet of it. Otherwise, they're going to sneak one past us. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean,
You
you'd
go
be
ahead.
real well aware they just come into the community as like this innocent Bible study. That's what it is. The character education just based on the Bible. And it's so much more insidious than that if you just peek under the surface a little bit. Like, you don't even have to go deep. Just taking a look at it a little bit further than their sales pitch, really, you can see what it's about.
I think one of the most fascinating things that you guys did was the map. So I would love to, I'm going to share my screen to just do like let's dive into the map and just let's look for a school district. It's a little big for me. How do I get out of this? Hold on. Sorry about that. So give me a school district. Someone on the call, give me a school
There's
district.
actually a zoom function on the map down there too. You can back out a little bit.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone see, is anyone putting a school district in the chat that we can look up?
You can just click on them too, or you can search any of them. I mean, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to
Check
see.
Iowa for me, because Iowa just passed legislation in their House today mandating schools do this. See what you pull up when you type Iowa in.
Iowa. Wow. Okay, so this is really cool. So it just immediately tells you what step they're on and the school districts. Somebody's looking for, okay, I'm going to look in some of the other ones. Let's look at Pennsylvania. So am I correct in saying that the only one at this, oh wait, that's Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay. So looks like Pennsylvania is okay.
No, probably not. It's probably just not coming up.
Well, let's try the actual I want to get a nets. Okay, everybody wants to do this. Springfield. Let's try this. Springfield. Step 4. Step 4.
And if you click on it, you can go see some more details about it too. Like, some of them you can see who the directors are on the actual page of the school. There's like a profile page that'll pop up.
Okay, well, I mean, someone put in Ohio, which obviously Ohio is where it started, you guys,
Right,
just so
that's
that
why
you
it's all
know.
red.
Yeah. So let's go to Hilliard City. So this comes up, step 10, open for enrollment. And go ahead, Zach, tell me look at this.
Yeah. I mean, it just tells you, some of the staff, different things like that.
Wow.
Yeah, all the information that, we've collected. So
Yeah, like anybody, okay, so anybody who's putting in Ohio, I think you're gonna have a rude awakening right now.
yeah, for
Uh,
sure.
Okay, someone is asking, when I try to spread awareness in my community, people say I'm against Christians. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You guys want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, that's, we get that all the time, of course. But it's just not true. We have a lot of different clergy members, not only in our group, but we've got a ton of letters that they have sent out to school boards, letters to the editor, letters to their congregations, just different sort of sects, different doctrines of faith that don't align with what they are teaching, because it is such a strict interpretation of this Bible education, right? So it's not the case at all. And there, like I said, it just depends on what your faith is. If you're a Catholic, we've got letters from different priests at Catholic parishes, different things like that. There's
I
been
was, yeah, I was going to say
Methodists that
the
have
same.
spoken out about it. A couple people from the Jewish community have sent letters out about it. So
I think specifically for our organization, the important thing for us is that not only within our leadership team, like in our organization itself internally, but our group and our, the people that follow us and are sort of aligned with our mission, are made up of devout Christians, devout
Right.
people of all different faiths. So not just clergy members, but people who are very much, they see that this is detrimental to their faith, if that makes sense, right? Because it's a misrepresentation, and it's almost a slap in the face is what I've heard to what, Jesus's teachings would have been, or what, their understanding of Christianity and the Bible is. And so there are a lot of people who are very, very devoted to our cause and involved because of that reason, because they are faithful, and specifically Christians. So, the only way that we can combat that is to just keep reiterating and keep making sure that they're part of our conversation, and that we are open and welcoming to people of all faiths, and Christians included, especially Christians that are against Christian nationalism, because that's what we're looking at, right? It's not against Christianity, it's against Christian nationalism, these RTRI programs that are being bastardized, and the encroachment on our secular education, the only option for a free secular education. So, that's what it comes down to. And the only way to combat that, I think, is just to keep reiterating it and make sure that we're inclusive.
Well, and I'll add on to that because I'm in some ways I consider myself really lucky because I am Christian, and I went to a Catholic high school, and I went to a Franciscan college, and my kids are went through all the steps through to their first communions, the CCD, and all that. This is so disgusting and offensive on every level. And Defense of Democracy we actually have faith leaders defending democracy who will write letters. So if you get accused of something like that, and I can probably dig up somebody from at least from your state to write a statement, that I would be happy to do that. But what Molly's saying is really true. Okay,
I'll drop the
Marcy.
link for the letters that we have too in the chat. So I'll go pull that up and drop that in the chat so other people can see it as well.
Great. And we have, right, like on your website, there is just so much information. Like if anybody wants to go,
Overwhelming. There's way too much information.
no, there's not. There's not, because I think that we need all that information. I think that it does take a bit to kind of parse through it. But when I took a look at it, I was like, oh my God, there's nothing but ammunition here. So Marcy, I see your hand is raised, but would you mind putting your question in the chat?
I saw
And
one she had earlier was about protection for the kids. Yeah, they do background checks, but they're third-party background checks. Like I know here in Ohio, our teachers go through FBI checks, and they go through like state criminal checks, and they get fingerprinted, and they get put into a system called wrap back, where if they are committed or convicted of a crime, I guess I don't even think they have to be convicted. I think as soon as they're charged with a crime, it gets put into that system, and the state licensing board is made aware automatically, like the school board is made aware if it's something to that caliber where they need to be made aware, at least, right? I'm sure they don't tell them about speeding tickets, but it's just sort of this real-time database that will tell them, to keep these teachers in check and to just make sure, nothing's going on. So Lifewise doesn't do anything comparable to that. They're just these third-party checks. I did one on myself, and just for comparison, like I did one for Lowe's for a job, and Lowe's brought back more of my criminal record than Lifewise did on their check. So that was concerning. And the other
all
thing
right.
is they let minors volunteer too, and you're not running background checks on minors. And also it's not just the people directly interacting with the children, right? Because they're taking them to these churches, they're taking them to these community centers. So what about those people? How often do we see some sexual abuse being covered up in some of these churches, right? That happens all the time. We've uncovered so many of them, and they're still just taking these kids to these buildings with no concern of who is around them.
And you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but their whole thing is like when my kids were in CCD, it was after school, and that was everybody was fine with that, right? Like Lifewise specifically says we do not do they want it to be during school hours.
Yes, and in fact, when not just we, but when other people have offered up to them alternatives, right? Like after school, before school, during lunch and recess time, they fight tooth and nail. They're adamant. They don't want that. And we know why. It's because we've actually ran the numbers, and their attendance when they are having it during lunch and recess drops so outrageously drastically you can't imagine, because kids don't want to miss that time, but they do want to get out of PE, they do want to get out of library or whatever it is. So there's a purpose behind them not wanting to do this, really, because we know that if it was their mission to spread the gospel, if it was their mission to help, like they keep saying it is, then they would provide free childcare before and after school to help parents that are in these situations that need this extra help. And in that way, they could at least help the community while they're spreading the gospel. But that is not the goal.
Let's see, another question. Jeff is asking, how do we combat it if it's at level 10?
I mean, it's kind of hard at that point. I think the best thing you can do is watchdog it, really. I mean, that's what we do, because the premise most of these legal institutions are taking is that, like, well, it's constitutional, and on its face, yeah, we know the program on its face has been ruled constitutional and it's okay, but they keep crossing these lines that have already been established. They do it all the time. They're making the schools send home these flyers. That looks like endorsement to me, when the school is sending home flyers about it, or putting it in their own letters, or putting it on their schedules. These are all things that we have examples of, multiple examples. They're crossing every line that they can at every chance they get, and they're doing it intentionally.
Yeah, because what it comes down to is they're wanting to challenge the precedent that is currently standing, and they want they're looking for a lawsuit at this point, right? They're trying to sort of get that, because that not only is going to give them teeth when it comes to trying to encroach this in other states, but it's going to give them teeth legally if they can get it, swayed in their favor in our courts that are stacked the way they are right now. So it is very concerning, and what you can do sort of depends on where you live, and it depends on your state laws. But like Zach said, if you're in a place that's very red, if you're already at step 10, if they've had the program running for a year and you just had no idea, because that's how they like to do things. That is on purpose, right? It's behind the scenes. It's very sneaky. And so, if not all hope is lost, because what we have to remember is that they're saying that this is constitutional, but they're bastardizing the reason that it was ruled as constitutional. So at a certain point, they're going to have to recognize that, like, the original intention is not what's happening, and it's not what's being carried out. And it's just going to be a matter of us continuing to yell about it, because it's not right. It is divisive and against our Constitution and awful for our children. So at this point, we're just trying to stay as positive as we can.
And that kind of leads into the next thing. Like, when they're trying to cross these boundaries, I saw one of the other questions down there was how many states have legislation. Can I share my screen, Karen?
I think so. Can you?
Yeah, you should be able to. Based on my screen anyway.
I will let Lifewise show you how many they have. But crossing the lines and trying to, like, change these laws is something that, like we said, they're doing intentionally. They're passing this legislation. Iowa just passed theirs today in the House. I think I said that earlier, but it specifically says in there that they can do it inside the schools with school board approval. So that's the biggest line that they're crossing at this point, and they're codifying that into law now. Let me pull this up.
While you're looking for that, I want to answer another question. Someone had asked, how do you define Christian nationalism and what makes Lifewise fall under that umbrella? So I just did I Googled the definition, full disclosure. I mean, I have what I think it is in my head, but I think this is really accurate. Christian nationalism is a form of religious nationalism that focuses on promoting the Christian views of its followers in order to achieve prominence or dominance in political and social life. So this is very much a political agenda. You saw all of those other logos from the, Moms for Liberty and Turning Point USA and all of those, or Heritage Foundation, that's politics. Those are politically motivated groups.
Yep. Yeah, so this is the map. It's Lifewise's own map. They presented this to the National Association of Christian Lawmakers back in December, which is why you're seeing this legislation pop up all over the country. They specifically said they were targeting 14 states. They only listed these 8. Ohio has already been changed. This map is old. It would be a red state now because they changed the law to shall there. That's what the red and yellow is. The red is shall, where these schools have to allow these programs.
Iowa's red now.
Yep, that just happened today. So yeah.
Was it, Zach, I'm sorry, forgive me, was it Iowa or Idaho?
Iowa. I went and looked right before we got
That's
on
right.
because
I was right.
I wanted to see specifically what the bill said because I
Trust
haven't
your instincts.
yet. Yeah.
Yeah, so so it's something that they're moving rapidly with, and it's all the things that you've already heard about. Okay, so if you're taking the education part out of it, and you've heard things like the 7 Mountain Mandate, or you've heard things like what's one of the other ones that we hear all the time? I can't remember what the specifics are called, but like, okay, 7 Mountain Mandate, and the people like Pete Hegseth that are sitting down with Lifewise, and the political figures on top of like the religious leaders. And you can see, if you start to put all those pieces together, you can see how much bigger it is than just an RTRI program issue. And that's really scary.
So
yes, it is. Thank you, Andy. Thank you. It is new apostolic reformation is what you hear a lot of, right? And that's what we're talking about here. This is very extreme Christian evangelism, creationism, all of those things.
And it's got a long history. This has been they've been working this plan for a very long time.
Yeah, this is 50 years in the making or more of them ever since, the Department of Education was formed. They've been basically saying they want to get rid of it. And part of that is part of that is their goal, right? And that is to have a Christian nation, to restore the Judeo-Christian, part of our nation, that they believe that that's where we were formed from.
I'm sharing your website because I just want to, as you're talking, I want to give people a sense of what's on here. The website will be linked in this video. I'm going to publish it to YouTube. We'll have your website linked to it just for ease of everybody to look, for whatever. But there's like a lot of wild stuff that you have documented. I don't know. What do you think? Like the personal,
personal experiences, probably. That's got a lot of stuff on it. I see Jessica had a question. Is there a time limit for how much they're pulling kids out of school? That depends on the state. Indiana passed the bill from may to shall last year, and they're already going back and changing it again to take away the time limitation that it did have. So in Indiana here, they're trying to eliminate the time limit entirely. I've seen some states where it's 3 hours, some states where it's 5 hours per week, some states where it's 1 hour. Well, I don't think I've seen states where it says 1 hour per week, but I've seen school boards put that into their policy. Which I guess is something else we need to talk about too, is once the state forces these school boards to have a policy, then that's what you can do next is help your school board ensure that they're writing a smart policy. They need to write a policy that addresses all of these issues that we've seen on the ground happening. Columbus City Schools just wrote into their policy that they're not allowed to send those invitations back. They're not allowed to send candy back with kids. So
no toys, no trinkets, no nothing.
Right.
And is there a template? Like I'm thinking about things that we can add to the template.
I dropped that example policy in the shared drive that we wrote up. Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's just something to give to school boards to say, this is where you need to start. Like, I certainly don't want school boards copying what we made up verbatim, but we did work with lawyers and policymakers to write it. We didn't just pull it out of thin air. But it's just a starting point for them to understand the issues.
Yeah, and that's the thing that we have to be very careful about, because we've seen some other organizations put out some sample policies that are directly against, what like for example, for like Ohio, the State Board of Education has said. And so you'll see them put out a policy that's directly against that, or a policy that, where they'll say something like they can only go an hour a week. Well, there is the part of the law that says that was changed, that it cannot be like restrictive, right? We can't give them a hard time to do this. Well, that can be viewed as that. And so that's asking for a lawsuit. And when you look at how these districts are, their financials and what position they're in, who do you think is going to win that lawsuit? Lifewise, the school district, like I mean, we're looking at the ruination of some of these places.
Somebody is asking about the connection for Moms for Liberty and Lifewise. And I do know that their logo was on that,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, they've sponsored each other's summits, things like that. They platformed each other. Yeah.
I mean, just a quick Google, it says, yeah, Lifewise is a sponsor of Moms for Liberty.
Yeah, they funnel money back and forth and like and hold each other up and so that sort of thing, use each other's platforms.
All the money.
Yes, exactly that. And that's sort of the other thing that is scary is, again, this is not, I saw someone in the chat mention like that it is important to remind everyone that it's not about being against religion, and we sort of went over that. But I think the other thing to remind everyone is that there are religions that have been doing this RTRI for decades without any problem at all, because it was never meant to be a plug and play, like in mass, everyone on board, let's go indoctrinate these children. It was supposed to be a very personal thing between your family, your faith leader, and your school. And just that personal, those three personal things. This is not supposed to be a company coming in and doing it on a corporate level.
Yeah, and I really like the analogy you guys made to first of all calling it a plug and play, because basically you get a kit and you can fire up a Lifewise.
Oh, 100%. And they have templates for everything you can imagine, things that I would have never even thought of for them
Each one of those 10 steps that we showed on the map, I mean, there is paper by paper. Here's what you do. Here's the letter to send to the school boards. Here's the letter to send out asking for donations. Here's what you send out to the students' families. Like,
here's what you send to the churches.
I mean, that's how you run any
Yeah.
business. I can't hate on how they're running their business because they're doing it really good from that aspect.
And do the exact opposite right now, like with this, but yeah, that it is literally a plug and play.
Absolutely. And I think that the thing is too, is that on its face, it's very innocent seeming. And that's sort of a hurdle that we've dealt with, is that a lot of well-meaning Christians are duped because it seems like on its face, it's such an innocent thing. They say they're non-denominational. They say that they're building the kid's character, right? It's character education, quote unquote. And so that leaves a lot of room for interpretation, a lot of room for people to sort of just assume that what they're doing is good because it's religious and it's Christian. And so we see that, we see that happening a lot. And that's also concerning, because the underlying message is that these people aren't paying attention to is that they do not approve of gay people, the homophobia, the transphobia, the purity culture, the, et cetera, et cetera. So
And as someone who, like, you guys know this back and forward, so please correct me if I'm misstating anything, but having taken a glance at what you have in your papers, in your website, it's horrific. Like there's one thing there, one of the question is like, and basically those difficult questions, right? And one of them was like, my mom and dad are Jewish. Like, it didn't say Jewish, but they said they don't follow Jesus, right?
They don't subscribe.
They don't subscribe. And will I see them? I mean, it's very sad. It's heartbreaking. Will I see them when they die? And the answer is no. Like, these children are being told that if their parents are not following Jesus, that they will never see their parents again after their parents die. I mean, like, that alone.
Yeah, which also sets the children on a mission to what? Convert and proselytize in their own personal life, because they want to save the people that they love. And so we see, not only do we see this with children who are already, Christian, but like children who aren't, like the Jewish kids and the Muslim kids and the atheist kids and the secular kids come home crying and not being able to sleep because they're learning about burning in hell, and because they have two moms at home that they're going to be punished for that, or because their mom and dad aren't married, that they're going to hell, or whatever it is. And it's when we say that it's legitimately causing trauma in our communities, that is not an exaggeration.
Okay, so I did see this in the chat, and I think we skipped it. Someone asked about Lifewise in Native American territories.
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Andy, that's a
I would agree.
fantastic question. Andy and I sort of know each other previously, and I would love to look into that more and sort of see if that's something that they have targeted, or that area, if there's anything that we can learn from that, because you're 100% correct as far as that history and what the sort of stuff that goes on in those areas. And I think we need to watch them, and especially be careful about that. So that's something that I'm going to put on my list, and I would love to touch base with you again. And also everyone here will, if we find anything out, it'll be updated on our stuff, and we'll share with Defense of Democracy. But that's a fantastic question, and one that we hadn't gotten there yet, and we need to. So
Yeah,
I
can say the CEO Joel. I know we've referenced Joel a few times, but I don't think that we've said he's the CEO.
Yeah.
But during his testimony in Ohio, he was asked, what about bilingual children, or non-Spanish speaking students? I'm sorry, or non-English speaking students. I'm sorry. And his answer was, well, we have promotional materials and permission slips in Spanish, but our classes are all in English, right? So that's just kind of something to think about. Like, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then part of that question was also about ADA requirements. That was something that they was asked, and I think it needs to be made real clear that they don't have to follow any of those, because they're a ministry. They get this exemption. They don't have to follow the maintenance. They don't have to follow ADA. They don't have to follow anything, because they get this ministerial exemption. So,
So I can't even go down that road, but I think we all know what that means. All right. So I'm going to say, first of all, I want to thank everyone who attended today. I want to especially thank Molly and Zach. Lindsay's asking, there's still more questions coming in, and I'm sure we're all going to have lots of more questions. And I'm sure there's
Reach out.
horrific examples, and just that everything that you can imagine. I will, Zach and Molly, again, I'm going to add this to the YouTube channel. I'll put your contact information. Listen, if anybody's watching this and you're feeling overwhelmed and stressed, I mean, we just got this notice from, that the Trump administration's dismantling the Department of Ed. It's not really a surprise, but it still hits hard. Groups like Secular Parents Against Lifewise, Secular Education Association, and Defense of Democracy. We are volunteer driven. We the funds, everything we do is on the backs of our volunteers, and everything our volunteers are doing is because they love our children and they love our country and they want to protect their rights. And so please, take what you have learned today and internalize it, think about it, but then take the next step. Join their Facebook group, join Defense of Democracy. Let's, collaborate and work together, because this will happen if we do not come together as a large majority and speak out against it. So if you're at a 10 and you feel like all is lost in your area, which believe me, I have conversations with my volunteers in Florida who really feel like this. Do not feel like please, there are children everywhere who need you to still speak out. All right. So please. And I want to say again, thank you. Molly and Zach, do you guys have anything final you want to end with?
No, I just want to say thanks to everybody for coming and joining. And yeah, we're always available. I mean, just email us, reach out to us on Facebook. We're happy to help. So
thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.